Good morning guys. We're back at it again with another video. All right, so in the last video, we did all the framing for the rainwater pump house here. In today's video, we're gonna get all the house wrap installed. We're gonna get the purlins installed. We're gonna get the plywood up on the roof. We gotta get the door installed and get the sheet metal installed. And then we're pretty well watertight, which is nice. That I can come back, do the installation, do the interior plywood, and then we can do all the plumbing work on the inside there. And if you didn't see on the last video, I've got some awesome Handeeman shirts. That's looking real nice. So these are gonna be available just for a short period of time. So if you want one of these shirts, definitely check out the link in the description box and in the comment section below. And that definitely helps support the channel if you want one of these shirts here and all the work that we're doing. All right, guys, enough chit chat. Let's jump right into it.
Ooh, now we're jumping into it. We're not getting started anymore. Anyways, doesn't this bring back memories? Oh, the memories of Hannah and I putting the house wrap on the tiny house. Probably would have been about 3.5 years ago, about 3.5 or so. So obviously the name of the game with house wrap is to get it as tight as possible. Since there's going to be an air gap behind the sheet metal, behind the siding, getting it super tight is not that important. But if you're installing siding directly right onto the house wrap, then you definitely want it as tight skis as you can get it, because that can cause moisture issues if water were to get behind the siding. But for this, not super critical, but we're still doing a really good job of getting it nice and tight. And I'm just using some plastic cap nails, which is certainly recommended if you're going to be leaving the house wrap exposed to the elements for a bit, because if you're just using staples, then it can potentially tear the house wrap. So it's good to use the plastic cap nails whenever you can. But I see Kyle from RR Buildings, he just uses a staple gun just to attach his stuff, but they usually put the sheet metal on like right afterwards. So it just kind of depends on your timing and stuff. But I had a lot of these plastic cap nails left over from all the other projects that I've done. So it's like, well, we might as well use them up wherever we can. So to finish off the last little seam there on the house wrap, you just use some Tyvek tape and just close that seam up there. And then we are looking real nice. And so then we can cut out the house wrap for the door. So we're just making a couple diagonal cuts from the top two corners and then getting it stapled to the inside of the door jamb there. Once we've got that secured, then I can trim it off with my knife. And then I actually just use a piece of I use some Tyvek tape just to kind of clean up that last little edge there. Certainly a little bit overkill, not really necessary, but it's how I did the door for the tiny house. So it was really nice doing this little pump house build, because it's the same style of building that I've done. This is the third time that I've done it. So once for the tiny house, once for the shed, and then once for the pump house. So after doing all those buildings, it really builds your confidence up, and things definitely go a lot faster for sure. So I'm installing the first purlin across the bottom there, or first hat channel piece. I don't know what we're going to be calling it in this video. But one thing that I'm doing here on the top right-hand corner of the building is I'm putting a 3-inch screw so I can rest that 2x4 on top of it and then get a screw in on the other side. So you got to come up with kind of little creative ways to make it a little bit easier for when you're working by yourself, so that you're just not struggling with certain aspects of a build. So once I get that 3-inch screw on the left-hand side, then I can get the purlin situated where I want, and then start putting screws through the intermediate studs. Ooh, that sounds really fancy. Now I'm just figuring out exactly where I want the middle hat channel piece to go. And again, putting a screw on the right-hand side there just so that it'll set up where I need it. And then I can get some screws in throughout the rest of it. Always got to work smarter and not necessarily harder. So these are just little things that you kind of pick up when you're working by yourself all the time. So we're extending the hat channel pieces. I've done it on the other sides there. So we're doing it on the end wall with the door here. So basically the framing of this is done the exact same way that the garage was done, except that I'm just using wood. So instead of using 1.5-inch hat channel pieces that are steel, we're just using, a 2x4 on its side to give us that 1.5-inch dimension there. So I'm just framing out around the door with 2x4s. Again, so this is the exact same way that we did it with the garage, except that we're just using steel pieces. So the door is kind of offset about 1.5 inches from where it would normally sit in a 2x4 framed wall. So it just means that on the inside, I'll just have some extra little trim pieces on the inside just to kind of clean it up nice. But we'll just be installing the J trim directly, well, not directly to this, but it'll be going over some flashing and then just be installed to the outside of the door here. But this 2x4 framing going around will allow me or give me a place to screw that J trim to the building there, and then we'll be installing the sheet metal over it a little bit later in the video. So getting a door installed when you don't have another access to get inside is a little bit tricky, and doing doors is not, it's definitely not one of my favorite things to do. And I think it's just because I'm not that great at it yet. I think I've done about 10 doors or so far. So I'm definitely getting better with experience, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about what I'm doing just because I don't feel like I'm that good. But we definitely got the door into place. So I like to use the composite shims instead of the wood shims that you'll see at Home Depot or Lowe's. And what I'm doing is I'm installing 3-inch screws going through the hinge directly into the framing of the building there, and that obviously gives the door a really solid foundation. So you want to do the hinge side first, get all that screwed in and get it plumbed up, and then you work on the latch side there. And then you're going to be fiddling with the door quite a bit just to kind of get the latch position correct. And there's just like little adjustments that you can make with the shims in order to kind of change the elevation of the latch. And obviously you don't want the door rubbing up against the frame. So there's just lots of little adjustments that you got to do. So don't get frustrated with doing doors. Just take your time, watch some YouTube videos on it, and just do your best. So now we can start installing the sheathing for the roof. So we're just using some 3/4 inch OSB sheathing and just using some 2-inch screws to screw it right to the roof joist there. So this is probably the only major difference I would say between the pump house and the garage, is that there's no sheathing for the roof on the garage. But it just kind of made sense to do it on such a small structure, and we're going to be putting insulation in the roof as well. So it's just a nice little backing for the insulation, and then around the sides, the house wrap is essentially kind of like the backing for it. So the insulation is not going to be touching the sheet metal at all in any point on the side or on the roof. One other thing to keep in mind is that if you ever have any overlaps, if you're doing either floor sheathing or if you're doing roof sheathing, you got a little bit of an overlap, don't go crazy over it. Just take your circular saw and trim it to the correct size. Now we're just installing some standard asphalt felt roof paper, whatever this stuff is called. I should really know this stuff off by hand a little bit better. Anyways, so we're just going to be installing this. Obviously with this stuff, you start at the bottom and then you work your way up to the top, so that if water were to get under the roof, then it's got a nice path to work its way down to the bottom of the roof. Again, I'm using these plastic cap nails. Again, with this roof felt paper being exposed to the wind, and we get some pretty high winds every once in a while, it is definitely going to be a better way of securing that felt paper to the roof there. It's only there just to hold it in place until you install the roof. So if you're going to be installing the roof like that same day, then it's not really that big of a deal. If you don't use those, you could probably just use some staples. But like I said earlier, I have them, so let's use them up and get this stuff installed. Now, the name of the game again for this project, like I mentioned earlier, was just to use up any old materials that I had. So I had all this flashing that I got from my buddy Jake, who's actually the architect for our future house, which you'll see an update on that very soon. So I just had this flashing that he had left over from a job site, and I was like, well, I'll just use it to flash around the door here. So if any moisture were to get behind the J trim that I install around the door, then it's not going to be exposed directly to the wood framing around the door. I wouldn't say it's like super critical, but I got it, so why not use it? And just use my blower just to clean off the sheeting ledge there on the concrete. And now I can start installing the sheet metal panels. So these are the exact same sheet metal panels as the garage. So I just got these all made from Versatube, and I just wanted it to match, right? Like, I could have just got some other sheet metal locally, but I mean, this building's, the pump house is sitting right next to the garage, so we might as well get the same sheet metal, build it the exact same way with all the same trim pieces and all that kind of stuff, just so that it looks nice and it looks like it's supposed to be there. And I built this. So basically at this point, this is the end of the second day for doing the sheet metal. So I know my neighbors and people on Instagram are like, wow, you're really doing this really fast. And fortunately, I've just had so much experience with doing the sheet metal and with doing all this framing over the last couple of years that it was really like I was just doing the same thing that I've already done a few times. So it definitely went very fast, and I was quite pleased with how quickly I was able to get this done. It took me a full 3 days total just to finish off the roof and some of the trim pieces around the roof there. But I was very pleased with how quickly I was able to get this done. And I'm measuring up for all my screws along the bottom row and along the middle row there, because those are the ones that are going to be visible. So I'm going to be looking at those for the next 20, 25 years or however long this building stays up for. But yeah, it's really worthwhile, especially with the screws that you're going to be seeing all the time. Just take the time just to measure. Always when you're marking on sheet metal panels, never use a marker, just use a pencil, because if you mess up your mark, you can just rub off the pencil mark just with your finger, whereas if you have a marker on there, then you're kind of SOL. So next step is to make all the fun cuts to go around the door here. Sorry, my camera kept going out of focus. I think the focus point was on the white door, and when the focus is on a white surface, it tends to not focus very well. But we're getting her done. We're getting her installed. And you'll see some blue chalk line on there, and that's from the cuts, or basically when I was laying out the cuts on it to use with the power nibbler. So that'll just all wash off with the rain anyways. And at this point now, it's all washed off anyways. So once we get the sheet metal installed going across the ends, and I already finished it on the other two sides there, is that we can go across the top and make our angle cut there. One thing that you'll learn when you're doing a lot of construction like this is that you may get really finicky over little mistakes, or you may get upset. Like maybe something's like 1/8 of an inch off or 1/4 of an inch off. Construction can be very forgiving in this sense, especially when you're doing wood construction. There's a lot more tolerance with it, and a lot of mess ups that you may make can certainly be covered up by trim. It can be covered up by different aspects of the construction process. So if something's not exactly perfect, then at the end of the day, it's what I learned with the tiny house. Like I was so trying to be so specific with certain things, and I'm like, you know what? Like at the end of the construction process, I was like, it wasn't really that big of a deal to be worried about something. So I installed some foam strips across the top of the sheet metal panel. So this is our lower edge here. Now I can install the corner trim. So I just installed the corner trim directly right to the building there. I didn't even make any cuts on it, so until obviously it was installed. So I just kind of like doing this with the corner trim, because once I get it installed, then I can really get that corner trim piece cut exactly how I want and get it lined up right with the roof line and all that kind of jazz. So you'll see me here in a second just making the cut on that, and then we get like a very nice precise cut with the trim. Again, I'm not a construction expert. I just learned this stuff for the most part from YouTube. Now I can install the drip edge at the bottom here. So I put a screw in the center. So putting a screw in the center on the top ledge definitely made it a lot easier to install. And I'm just installing screws at every other major rib going across the sheet metal panels here. And then again at the end, I just left it overhang and then just cut it exactly to the correct size that I want. Like I said, I've been trying to use up as many old materials that I had for this project. So when Versatube shipped me the garage, they sent me 2 extra roofing panels, and I think the roofing panels were over 20 feet long. So I was able to just reuse these roofing panels. So I just cut them to the exact size that I want. And then I was able to use them for the pump house here. I was thinking, I'm like, what should I do with these extra roofing panels? Because I'm not going to build another structure like this anytime soon. And just to have 2 extra, roofing panels, I'm like, it doesn't really get you very far. But I didn't realize that I was going to be building this, so I didn't throw it out or anything. So it was nice that I was able to use something like this up. It saves me some money, and those materials, they're not going to be going to the landfill or anything like that. So we're just installing this, screws at the top, screws at the bottom, and then a row of screws through the center there, and just getting this shit done. So at the bottom there, we have 2-inch overhang, which is the same amount of overhang on the garage there. And then I'm installing some little foam strips to go under the roof panels at the bottom there, so that bugs and critters and stuff can't get under the roof and create nests and create potential issues down the road. But yeah, no, this was a good little project. This was a lot of fun because it really encapsulated a lot of different building aspects in a very short period of time. So like I said, I did this in just about 3 days. This is the third day that I'm working on it. So I was able to get the roof panels done and then get the final eave trim pieces and the gable trim at the top of the building there. And then we are looking real good. So here's some final shots of it. So the pitch of the roof is the exact same pitch as the garage. So you can see how it's just kind of like it's the garage's little brother. It's just the little brother sitting over there.
All right, guys, that is a wrap on the exterior of the pump house here. Door works very nice. So next steps is to do the insulation on the inside. So I've got some denim insulation, and then I've got some plywood to sheet the inside of it. And I don't think I'm going to show that because it's pretty basic. And then I'm going to paint everything white inside. So I think the next update on the pump house that we're going to do is going to be the electrical and obviously all the plumbing inside of there. And yeah, if you want to grab one of those awesome t-shirts that I have, there's probably not going to be very much time left by the time that I post this video. So check out the description box in the comment section, get yourself some merch and support the channel. Awesome. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll catch you on the next video. Talk to you soon.